This conference will now be recorded.
All right, so we're going to continue our state standards review of, I'm going to call this one Section 2B, Part 2, 2B. This one applies to the Continuum of Care Assisted Living, Title 310, Chapter 663, and Title 663, Sections 1-890, and so forth. This one is applicable to nursing home administrators, as all of them are, and RCAL, Residential Care Assisted Living Administrator applicants. So if you're in that category, this is where you need to go and spend some time getting ready for your state exam. I'll go on and start just like I always do. This one's going to be a little bit shorter than most of them because, for one thing, assisted living is probably the least regulated of most of our lines of service that we have, mostly because of strong lobbying efforts that they have. But in this case, I'm only going to go through the rules that the health department has. I'm actually not going into the statute at all because anything I would say there would be redundant. So because everything that's covered in the rules is predicated in the statute that we're looking at. And again, what I look at is things that are on the test and also things that I think are important for you to actually know. So let's get on with the review of assisted living, continuum of care and assisted living rules. Title 310, Chapter 663. Like we always do, we usually start with definitions that are there. Some of the same definitions you would normally think to look at as abuse. What is an assisted living center? Those kinds of things. And those are mostly the kinds of things that you need to be paying attention to. That's a chapter or section 1-2. Section 1-3 is where you see other provisions applicable to assisted living centers. I want to point this out to you because we're not testing you on these things, but you're still accountable for them, even in law, as it says right here. Other provisions applicable to assisted living centers, and it lists some of these things, and some of these things include things like the Nursing Home Care Act. It doesn't say that, but that's what they are. Tells you 63 OS section 1-1909, 1945, 1946. That's the Nursing Home Care Act, some of these things. So you need to be paying attention to some of these things because they do apply to you. It doesn't mean that at this point we're not testing you from that stuff. Someday I think we may advance to include that for assisted living, but right now we're not. But you're still accountable for it. Just want to point that out to you because it's relatively important that you understand that you are accountable to stuff that's not in these regulations that we're talking about, but also in the Nursing Home Care Act. Subchapter 3, Services and Care, it says 3-1A says an assisted living center shall not care for any resident needing care in excess of the level that the assisted living center is licensed to provide or capable of providing. Well, that only makes sense. And again, as I've said before, we have to say a lot of things that are common sense because if we don't, then it's not the law and it's not written down for someone to say that's the way it is. So we say a lot of things that seem like we shouldn't have to, but we do. Paragraph B says an assisted living center shall ensure that the routines of care, provision, and service delivery are directed by the resident to the maximum extent possible. That's why it's assisted living, because they're taking care of themselves and you're assisting them. That's pretty much why it is that way. Moving on to paragraph 3-5, involuntary termination of residency. Paragraph A1 says termination of residency when appropriately placed. Says the center shall provide written notice to the resident and to the resident's representative, giving the resident 30 days notice. 30 days, there's a number. I keep saying something about numbers popping out, but there's a number, 30 days notice of the assisted living's intent to terminate the residency and move the resident to an appropriate care provider. May not apply if there's a emergency termination mandated by their immediate health needs, or paragraph 2, when necessary for physical safety of the resident or other residents. So 3-8C, moving right along. It talks about food storage. Paragraph C is food, says leftovers that are potentially hazardous foods shall be used or disposed of within 24 hours. And non-potentially hazardous leftovers that have been heated or cooked may be refrigerated for up to 48 hours. Okay. Paragraph D3 goes on to say that milk temperature for drinking shall be stored at a temperature of 41 degrees Fahrenheit or below and should not be stored in a frozen state. And nursing home administrators should notice this, that those are identical to the requirements that you had in the nursing homes as well. Subchapter 5, resident assessments. Paragraph 5-2 goes into the timeframes for those, and I'll go through those real quick because, again, there's a lot of numbers here and the things you should be familiar with. Paragraph A, the assisted living center shall complete the admission assessment within 30 days before or at the time of admission. The assisted living center shall complete the comprehensive assessment in accordance with the following: within 14 days after admission of the resident, once every 12 months thereafter, and promptly after a significant change in the resident's condition. So those are fairly important little numbers for assisted living people to know. Subchapter 9, oops, I went too far there, go back one. Subchapter 9 is the next piece that we're going to look at. Staffing requirements. 9-5A says all of the assisted living center's employees shall be subject to the requirements for the criminal arrest checks applicable to nurse aides under 63 OS Sup 1997 Section 1-1950.1. So all of your employees are subject to those requirements for criminal arrest checks, not just your aides, but that they're using that as the standard. 9-6B2 talks about the limitations on one person staffing, and basically if you have such a plan where you're having one person in the facility overnight, such as an aide or a nurse, that plan has to be approved by the department, and usually not such a great plan to do that because you really need help in most of those facilities unless they're really practically independent people. So get that plan approved by the health department if you're doing it. Subchapter 11, quality of care. QA committee 11-1 says they meet at least quarterly, and it tells you what the committee shall do. It says they monitor trends and incidents, they monitor customer satisfaction measures, and they document quality assurance efforts and outcomes. 11-2-1, quality representative says the registered nurse or a physician, if a medical problem is to be monitored or investigated, that means that it says the quality assurance committee shall include at least the following. So you have to have a nurse, an RN, or a physician if there's a medical problem. And paragraph 4 says you have to have a pharmacist consultant if there's a medication problem to be monitored or investigated. So the QA committee is in flux depending on what the issue is that you're looking at. So just something to keep in mind. Skipping all the way over to subchapter 19, administration, records, and policies. Incident reports. 19-1A says the timeline for reporting, and again, this is rich with numbers, so you probably want to pay attention to some of this as what might be on the test. Timeline for reporting. All reports to the department shall be made within one department business day of the reportable incident's discovery. A follow-up report of the incident shall be submitted to the department within 5 business days after the incident. The final report shall be filed with the department when the full investigation is complete, not to exceed 10 department business days after the incident. And it goes on to talk about notification to the nurse aid registry using the Form 718 within 1 business day of the reportable incident's discovery. Paragraph B, 1, 2, and 3. First word in those 3 paragraphs is allegations, allegations, and allegations. That is the most commonly, that's the most common problem for administrators, is that they do not file an incident report when they've found an allegation of abuse or neglect or misappropriation. They've looked at it and said, that's not real, it didn't happen, but it is an allegation and it is reportable, and you do have to report those things. It says it right there, black and white. Paragraph E talks about licensing boards. So if there's someone licensed, such as yourself, for abuse, neglect, or misappropriation, that has to be reported to that appropriate licensing board. So that includes you as a licensed administrator. So if you are accused of something, you have to be reported to this board to deal with that. 19-2B7 talks about bulk supply. Says should not acquire or nor maintain a liquid medication in a package size that exceeds 16 fluid ounces. Again, that's a number easily testable item. Paragraph 8 talks about the bulk dispensing, and it's only allowed for oral analgesics and acids and laxatives. No other category shall be maintained as bulk medication. Subchapter 25, we're moving right along in assisted living items here. Periodic inspections, as are surveys. It says there at 25-1A, the department shall inspect each continuum of care facility or assisted living center through an unannounced inspection at least once each 15 months, with a statewide average of 12 months for all continuum of care facilities and assisted living centers. So that's, you can figure out when you're getting your surveys. 25-4, paragraph B5, that's on page 35 in my book, says acceptance of the plan of correction by a department does not absolve the continuum of care facility or assisted living center of the responsibility for compliance, should the implementation not result in correction and compliance. Acceptance indicates the department's acknowledgement that the continuum of care facility or assisted living center indicated a willingness to make a timely correction. That is all that says. And that brings us up to the bathing temperatures in Appendix A, which are in assisted living 115 degrees. And again, I'm not going into the statute for assisted living, because anything I would say there, and it's only a few pages worth, anything I would cover there, there's 9 pages. Anything I would say would be repetitive of what we've already covered. So pay attention to those things I pointed out, and good luck on the assisted living part of the exam. If you're taking the assisted living exam, you're definitely also taking the next part, which is residential care, and that's just part of it. So you got to know them all. Even though you think you're going to work in assisted living, you got to know residential care and assisted living, because that's what the assisted living license allows you to do. So you have to do it just like the nursing home administrator has to know nursing homes, ICFs, assisted living, residential care, and adult daycare. So you RCAL people have to know res care, even if you don't expect to work in it. It's your responsibility. So good luck with this part, and we'll go on to the next part in a separate video.